Okay, now more reviews for reading aloud to the kids. I don't even remember how we found this book. Maybe from the library? I read aloud to the boys over a course of a number of different nights from the mixed up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L. Konigsburg. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I wrote this about it after we finished. This was such a wonderful little adventure, and I love that it could stimulate the boys' imaginations without needing something particularly fantastic or supernatural in nature. It's a quaint little story that had the boys wondering what parts were real and imagined for the book. This version had a nice afterword that allowed us to dig deeper into Konigsburg's real inspirations, down to actual furniture and locations in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. One of my favorite aspects of this book is that it played with frame of reference in a way that interested my kids. They recognized the flips of perspective and asked questions about it in ways that I didn't think they had experienced yet in books. That led them on an interesting path for the reveals in chapters 9 and 10, and hopefully gave them a new appreciation for alternative ways to tell a story. I'm always looking for interesting, subtle teachers like this book, and I really liked leading my kids through it. I had never heard of this book before, and it won the Newbery Award, which is one of the many different awards for kids fiction. I think at the time I thought that the Newbery Award was a generally accepted positive award for books, but as I read about people's reviews here in Goodreads, most of the people kind of treat it as though it's a marketing type thing more than anything else. That being said, all of the people talk about how the Newbery Award with this particular book is really special and really deserved. The book is really, really fantastic, and it is the kind of book that you wouldn't think would necessarily be appreciated by kids in today's world. The fact that it deals with a subtle fantasy of a girl and her brother running away to live in a museum for a while is interesting, but it doesn't include the sort of wild fantasy or wild supernatural types of things that everything seems to be focused on these days. So it's really a great grounded story about a girl and her brother, and the interesting way that they're approaching something that is completely outside the norm, but connected to a fairly lived-in experience, which I think is great. It was powerful for my kids. And like I said, I don't remember where we found it. We maybe found it at the library, or maybe one of the boys brought it home from school at the time. This was 2017, so my boys were 8 and 6 years old, and it seemed to be a really great story for them. It was another chapter book. The one that we read before this was The Phantom Tollbooth, which was wildly fantastic and wildly fantastical. But this one is really grounded, and it was a great complement to that. It was a great way to look at literature and shifting of perspectives. It did it in a way that works for elementary age kids. I definitely recommend this book, and I don't know that everybody knows about it. Definitely the people who are tracking the Newbery Awards know about it. I would recommend it for anyone, and definitely for kids who are getting excited about reading chapter books and maybe have a little bit of an aversion or aren't necessarily as excited about wild fantasy books or science fiction or supernatural things. This one leans decidedly towards the real, and that's pretty great. The book again is From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L. Konigsburg, a Newbery Award winner. We read it in 2017, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Till next.